What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. Today let's do our Urban Shadow Choux ML Choux honest review. Had a summon session, got to play her. Unfortunately, we can't use her in real-time arena just yet, so we played a ton of lobbies. A lot of different players brought their different Choux in. I had my own testing with her as well, and I definitely have some thoughts on her, especially for the newer players that are considering pulling for her. On top of that, you guys already know the drill. If you did summon already prior to this, because I think my video is coming out a little later than usual, I try to get it up the night of her release or a little after, but it's been a minute. So if you guys did already summon, let me know how it went. I think I started the day at 9,000 mystics, so I used about 5,000. Things look a little shaky. I was getting worried. A lot of 10 pulls with not a single spark, but I did end up getting her with about 100 summons or 100 pulls. So 5,000 mystics, not too bad. Definitely will not complain about that. I think the next Moonlight unit is going to be Natalon Monk, possibly. You guys have any guesses? I think she's the one that's kind of been revealed. We already saw some animations, I think, for her. Other than that, who knows? Because Urban Shadow Choux came out of nowhere. Same thing with like Landy. So anyways, without further ado, let's start the review. So let's try out this new format again, and I'm going to talk about Urban Shadow Choux and whether or not I think she's worth you guys summoning, depending on if you're new, mid-game, late game, all that stuff. And then if you guys want, after that, I'll go over my findings on her build, what I found works, what I want to try in the future, and kind of just go over the skill enhancements, gear setups, artifacts, all that stuff. Now, first things first, Urban Shadow Choux with an injury style build, I think is going to be primarily a PvP unit. Injury, not really great for PvE, so this is, of course, going to be a PvP focused review. Beyond that, guys, is she worth summoning for new players? Let's start with that. I don't think so at all. I'm going to tell you guys straight up that I think her kit is very, very powerful. It's just a combination of maybe this isn't the meta for her at the moment, and I'll explain more why in detail as we go over more into the video. But other than that, I just don't think she does a lot for new players that you couldn't get from other injury units that you might pick up later down the line. Units like Alencia, like Mortelix, all these injury units are going to do sort of different styles of things. Urban Shadow Choux, I don't think really brings anything that's going to be unique, must have. Whereas if you guys, a lot of people were asking me, should I summon like Lionheart Cermia, for example? I think Lionheart Cermia is going to do so much more for a lot of players than someone like Urban Shadow Choux. That's not to say Choux's kit is bad. I actually think it's really good, and I think she's fun. I think her design is amazing, but that's not what this review is about, right? This is an honest review where I tell you guys if she's worth it, and I think for a lot of players, she may not be. Once again, we'll talk more in detail on why, but I'll tell you guys, maybe for the late game player that likes her design, that expects to fight into standard, and I'll give some examples on scenarios where I think she'll really, really shine. But for the most part, Choux's not a unit that you can pick early, right? Being an HP scaling, injury, sort of bruiser, a lot of times she's going to get out-tempoed, out-aggroed, cleaved. You really want to force or fight, or excuse me, pick her into a match where she's going to be fighting other bruisers. A lot standard, you know, just a standard lineup where she can really take the time to injure units down, get those buzz. I'm going to call them buzzes, guys, because it's kind of hard to say. But that injury, the AoE, and then the big skill 3, skill 1, skill 3 again, right, where she really, really shines. Those aren't matches you see a lot in the current RTA meta, especially at higher levels, where players at the drop of a dime will punish you for playing too slow, too tanky. So for that reason, I don't think this is Urban Choux's meta, and beyond that, I don't think a lot of newer players especially really need her in her account until much later. With that being said, I do think she's awesome. I think she's fun. And for those of you that have room to, you know, spend some mystics on, if you already have a lot of the amazing units like Choux, like Lionheart Cermia, I think Last Rider Crowd just rolled through. If you already have like staples, I do think she could be worth picking up if you like her style. So let's go ahead and go over my build and all that good stuff. All right, guys. So this is the build I used for all my testing, and I think it worked pretty well, at least for my style. Now, I will say, guys, notice the speed I have at 222. I think Choux with her free crit, and the fact that you don't really need too much of any one stat necessarily, because we are just trying to live long enough to stack a ton of injury. Some people like to drop crit damage. I do think, in general, you can build her much faster than I do. I've seen people push like 250, and that combined with the speed means we're really going to be able to keep up, especially against other teams that want to push the tempo. I think the faster Urban Shadow Choux can cycle, pump out those buzzes, and all that stuff, I think will be amazing. So those of you that can push higher speed, definitely go for it. I just can't really spare any other gear. I don't really want to take any, and honestly, I just haven't had enough speed gear farming to get to a comfortable level where my bulk, HP especially, remember she's an HP scaler, and then my crit chance and crit damage are still on point. I don't know if I like the low crit damage builds just yet though. I saw a lot of people roll through. I made a lobby where I had a lot of people bring in their Choux, test them out, different builds, and they showed me the stats. The crit damage, the lower crit damage, I think is at risk of sometimes, especially when barriers are present, of just feeling very, very underwhelming. Speaking of barriers, when there's a lot of AoE barriers from either Arwell, from Last Rider Crow, anything doing AoE, a lot of times the 2000 fixed damage is going to get cut off almost completely, or just a lot of it's going to be shaved off from the barrier, meaning you're really not going to stack up enough injury and time. And unless your opponent is playing even slower than you, slower tempo, a lot of times they're going to aggress stronger into the Choux, and you're going to be left in a difficult position where Choux may not be having enough time to really build up that injury and then finally nuke people down with a skill 3, skill 1, skill 3 combo. Okay, so just a heads up, I do think speed with the speed up on her skill 3 is very important. So those of you that can push higher speed, maintain some damage, which is why I like Draco Plate, but we'll cover, there's a lot of different artifacts you can go over. And last but not least, I think for sets, there's a few different sets you can try. I do think speed right now is going to be the king. If you guys have like destruction, you want to try higher crit damage, you can go for that. As destruction versus crit on units that want crit damage, destruction is actually more weighted in terms of value. But I think for a unit like Choux, where some players don't like crit damage at all, obviously speed might feel a little bit nicer. I encourage you guys to try it out though. I might try it out because I do think some of my destruction pieces have high speed subs, and then I can just shift more of my stats elsewhere and leave crit damage maybe even similar. But overall, I think HP main stats on the right side are going to be key. Speed set is probably where you want to start at, guys. This is going to give you some free value, and like I keep mentioning, I think speed scales really well with your kit. And then last but not least, for the 2-piece setup, I think crit set works just fine. A lot of players, if they think their gear is good enough, like to forego the crit set for things like penetration set, which I think for Choux is definitely not mandatory. It will add some damage, but it's not as nice as other units that can really, really make it pop a lot more. So crit set is fine. If you guys think you can flex with some pen set, go for it by all means. Some people maybe can try immunity. Just remember, guys, overall stats is always the most important. So if you guys are lacking crit, or if you try to force a pen set, for example, and your stats are looking subpar, put on that crit set, guys. Don't get that ego up. Just go for overall stats where it feels good and it works, okay? That being said, overall, I think Choux, let's go over her strengths. I think she could end up being the premier injury unit. I keep mentioning this isn't really the meta for her, as the tempo, the aggressive, if you just try to play too slow, people are going to snap like fast units at the end of their drafts and hit you with like the Architect Lycas into the Strazes, and then Urban Choux is just in big trouble. So you really want to make them forced into a similar style where they're also going to be playing some standardized units. And if they play bruisers and you get this Urban Shadow Choux through, it's going to feel amazing. One thing I actually found a lot of success with is if you guys are Captain Landy players, ML Landy players, Landy herself will kind of force your opponent to pick certain units, kind of slow the match down a lot, because a lot of players don't want to cleave into anti-crit. They don't want to risk not killing Landy, so what are they going to bring? They're going to slow down the tempo by bringing units like Rowana, Lionheart Sirmia, Lethe. You guys know the typical units that are brought to fight against her. I think that's where Urban Shadow Choux can come in later in the draft and really, really punish or at least threaten some of those slower tempo units that are meant to kill the Landy. Other than that, though, it's kind of hard to pick Urban Shadow Choux. You definitely can't first pick her. You really want to use her in those spots where you're going to pick other injury units. And for those reasons, I just don't think she's really a must-have at all. Now, compared to other injury units, though, I think she is way more fun, way more flashy, and has probably more potential on top of that. But I can't really find a clear argument that she is like way superior to the likes of Valencia, which is one of the other premier injury units that are meant to fight other bruisers, tanks like Yulha, Apocalypse Robbie, things like that, right? So overall, once again, guys, like I said at the start of the video, I don't think anyone really needs Choux, but I do think she's fun, and her kit is not weak. It's just this sort of archetype and this meta aren't really favorable for units like her. All right, now let's go over skill enhancement real fast, guys. This is a clear plus 15, okay? Just give her all the Molas when you can. If you really got to skimp, maybe skip on the skill 1 a little bit. Try to max her out when you can. Skill 2, I guess if you guys can overcap on crit, you can kind of just analyze that. But really, for these kind of units, you really want to make sure they're plus 15. She's going to be getting value out of all of her skills. So just spend the Mola when you can. You really want to, because I think every little bit helps on bruisers that want all stats like her. Last but not least, let's talk about the artifact selection real quick. I prefer Draco Plate. I saw people try Proof of Valor. I saw people try Golden Rose, right? So it's very similar to units like the likes of Lionheart Sirmia. You just want strong warrior artifacts that give a lot of value. So Choux can make use of crit damage. You can make use of the crit damage reduction. Or, the damage reduction, excuse me. Proof of Valor, just straight damage reduction if you think your Choux is going to get focused too often. If you want to pick her into more aggressive compositions. And then I think Golden Rose could work. But for me, I don't have a very high level one. Where's my golden rose? Right here. I don't have a very high level one, and on top of that, I think other units might need this more, and I don't know how much really she scales off the lifesteal compared to units like Lionheart Sirmia. I have mine on designer a little bit, but you guys get what I'm trying to say here. So to wrap everything up, guys, is Urban Shadow Choux worth your hard-earned mystics? Maybe, but the newer you are, the more you're missing in your Moonlight pool or just unit pool in general. I think the less you're going to need a unit like Urban Shadow Choux, who is strictly a PvP unit, at least in my eyes for now. Maybe someone will find something cool, but injury units typically not strong in PvE. And on top of that, it's just not a great meta, and other injury units can do the job. I can't really see a scenario just yet where Urban Shadow Choux is like way better, the premier #1 undisputed injury spot, and injury just in general for RT right now. Not seen all the time. Very rarely, if the draft devolves into a tank or a standard tanky bruiser kind of matchup, then Urban Shadow Choux can shine, but there's other options on the field. So really, I think this is more for players that just really like her design, which, by the way, guys, I haven't even talked about this. I think Urban Shadow Choux just in general, how come they're showing Singelica here? Urban Shadow Choux just looks so good. I think they designed the design, the colors, these little Power Ranger mice look so cool that when she pops her glasses on. The giant rocket beam, which, by the way, sometimes when it just pops units left and right, is so cool to see. I think she's worth mystics for the later game player that can spare some mystics and that want to try out different style units that maybe aren't like, you know, meta breaking for any reason. Now, that being said, I think her kit is super strong, so if the meta shifts, I could be eating all my words, and Urban Shadow Choux could be a premier unit. We'll have to see. But for now, guys, consider very carefully on summoning her. You may not need her just yet. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.